Hi, this is Miss Lauren from the Lawrence Branch Youth Services Department, and today we are going to learn more about Juneteenth. Juneteenth might feel like a new holiday because it is finally being recognized by our government, but it has actually been around for a very long time. Have you ever heard of it before the past couple years? Today we are going to learn how Juneteenth started and why it is so important for every American of all races to know about. And it all started with slavery. What is slavery? Slavery is when one person owns another person. In the United States, slavery started a very long time ago when Africans were taken from their homes without their permission. They were brought to the United States away from their families and forced to work here without being paid or treated well. I'm sure you know that this was not right. Enslaved people were humans just like everyone else. They were smart and skilled and should have had rights, but they did not, and slavery lasted more than 240 years in our country. Many years later, Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. Enslaved people and abolitionists, who were people who were against slavery, were hopeful. Lincoln was known for being against slavery. Some states in the U.S. did not like this. They wanted to keep slavery. These states separated from the U.S. and formed their own country. Lincoln was not happy and said they couldn't do this. This led to the Civil War, which started in 1861. The Civil War was fought between the Union, northern states, shown here in blue, and the Confederacy, southern states, shown here in red. It threatened to break up the United States. In 1863, President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This said that all enslaved people in the southern states were free. So, what is freedom? Freedom means being able to make your own choices and act the way you believe is best. Enslaved people did not have freedoms, but now that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, all slaves in the South were free, right? Wrong. In Texas, the enslaved people were not free. They did not hear the news about the Emancipation Proclamation. Why? Well, first, the location. Texas was the farthest west of the Confederate States. Back then, news took time to travel. Another reason is white slave owners purposely kept the news from enslaved people. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger entered Galveston, Texas, with Union soldiers and read to the enslaved people a summary of the Emancipation Proclamation. He said, "The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the U.S., all slaves are free." This is the origin of Juneteenth. So what happens now? As you can imagine, this is an exciting time for former enslaved people. African Americans were finally able to own their own land, build houses and start farms, learn to read and write, and work for wages. Many set out to find lost family members. Enslavement tore many families apart. Some used newspapers to reach out and see if family members were still alive. Juneteenth celebrations began with parades honoring the oldest living people who were formerly enslaved. Juneteenth started in the South, where 90% of African Americans lived right after the Civil War ended. As they migrated to other parts of the U.S., they brought Juneteenth celebrations to the North and West. So how did Juneteenth become an official holiday? Al Edwards, a member of the Texas House of Representatives, felt that Juneteenth was an important part of the state's history and should be made a holiday in Texas. In 1980, this happened, and Al Edwards was known as the father of Juneteenth. The journey to get Juneteenth recognized as a national holiday, which means the whole country will celebrate it, started with Opal Lee. Opal Lee was a teacher born in Texas. She taught her students the importance of Juneteenth and made it her mission for it to become a national holiday. In 2016, Lee walked 1,400 miles from her home in Texas all the way to Washington, D.C. Along the way, she collected more than 1 million signatures from Americans who supported this cause. When she started her walk, she was 89 years old. In June of 2021, President Joe Biden signed a law making Juneteenth a national holiday and honored Opal Lee at the ceremony. She was 94 years old and is known as the grandmother of Juneteenth. The Juneteenth flag features a white star in the center representing Texas, known as the Lone Star State, and the freedom of African Americans in all 50 states. Around the star is a nova or new star that represents new beginnings for all. The curve in the middle symbolizes a new horizon of opportunity for African Americans. The date, June 19, 1865, is the day Juneteenth was born in Texas. The flag also uses red, white, and blue, the same as the American flag. That's the story of how Juneteenth became a national holiday. There are many ways Juneteenth is celebrated today. Parades, cookouts, and family reunions are popular, with families gathering together to celebrate. Red foods are often seen, such as red velvet cake, strawberry soda, watermelon, and red beans and rice. Red signifies the bravery and endurance of enslaved people and the blood that was shed by African Americans in their fight to be free. Interested in finding out more about Juneteenth? Here are some books from the Mercer County Library System for kids of all ages. First, we have a board book, The Story of Juneteenth, written by Dorena Williamson, illustrated by Markia Janae. What are the origins of America's newest national holiday? With simple, age-appropriate language and colorful illustrations, this little board book introduces children to the events of June 19, 1865. The book also connects those events to today's celebrations. Another board book, Let's Celebrate Juneteenth, written by Tanya Abari, art by Tabitha Brown. This book is a wonderful introduction to Juneteenth, featuring colorful illustrations showing various ways people celebrate the anniversary of freedom for all. This book introduces young children to this important commemorative holiday and opens the door to understanding that not everyone was or is free. Next, we have a fiction picture book titled A Flag for Juneteenth, written and illustrated by Kim Taylor. This book depicts a close-knit community of enslaved African Americans on a plantation in Texas the day before the announcement is made that all enslaved people are free. The story follows Huldah and her community as they process the news of their freedom and celebrate together by creating a community freedom flag. Next, we have The Night Before Freedom, a Juneteenth story, written by Glenda Armand, pictures by Corey Barksdale. 8-year-old David and his family gather at Grandma's house in Galveston, Texas for a cherished family tradition, Grandma's annual retelling of the story of Juneteenth. This moving picture book tells the story of Juneteenth with all the care and reverence such a holiday deserves. The rhyming text and stunning illustrations will teach children about this historic day in history. Now, here is an easy biography titled Opal Lee and What It Means to Be Free, written by Alice Faye Duncan, art by Keturah A. Bobo. The true story of Black activist Opal Lee and her vision of Juneteenth as a holiday for everyone will inspire children to be brave and make a difference. Growing up in Texas, Opal knew the history of Juneteenth, but she soon discovered that most Americans had never heard of the holiday that represents the nation's creed of freedom for all. Next, we have a juvenile nonfiction book titled The Real History of Juneteenth, written by Elliott Smith. Explore Juneteenth's little-told history from the first Jubilee to the making of a national holiday. This book is part of the Left Out of History series, which sets to explore the misunderstood and underexamined past and tells you what was missing from history books. And finally, we have from the popular Who Is, Who Was series, What is Juneteenth? Written by Kirti Jewell, illustrated by Manuel Gutierrez. This is a great book detailing the history of slavery, how Juneteenth was born, and what happened to enslaved people once they were freed. To find these books and more, head over to the Mercer County Library website and catalog and search for Juneteenth books. Our website is www.mcl.org. You can also search for programs about Juneteenth from our website under the Events tab. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully you learned something new about Juneteenth like I have, the day that everyone in America became free. And finally, just a quote from Opal Lee, "If we don't remember what we have been through, our nation is doomed to repeat it." Thank you.